say we have about 26 minutes, but we're gonna go ahead and start. Do I have a motion to begin the meeting?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Thank you, Ms. Nelson. We're gonna go ahead and start. I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Balachandran and Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. I think our first item, maybe we should just bring the manual up to the top of the agenda. Is that how we should work on this, Ms. Wiggins?
I think because we have such a short time, I think the plan is to, one, settle on a date for the next meeting within the next 2 weeks or so, and then to talk about the in-kind donations and save the summary guide discussion for the next meeting when we have more time.
Okay. So our next meeting, so was the idea to meet in a week? Is that the idea?
If everyone's available.
Yeah.
And-
Um,
And
yeah,
so
go
the
ahead.
the purpose is to just respond to the budget that would be the provisional budget that would be submitted. Is that the main focus?
For next week?
Yeah, for like having another meeting so soon.
Oh, I think it's to finish up the manual, because I think I mean, we could do that offline, but we should meet to discuss any issues. I mean, I think everybody should come having gone through the manual, and we could also, you know, go through questions online while we do that, and then meet up in a week to finalize the manual. I think that should be our goal. And then we can also include a discussion on the budget for the next week.
Okay, just in terms of timing, if we're interested in having it at the same time, like on a Wednesday, 2 weeks from today is better for me. I think I'm gonna be driving in a vehicle. At that time, next week, I could potentially join by phone. But if it's not urgent to have it that soon, having it on then the 26th Wednesday would be better for me.
I mean, I think there is urgency for the manual because people would be wanting, I assume, to try to sign up as publicly financed candidates. We already have one person who has. And so to have the rules and regulations upfront would, I think, be a good idea. What is your schedule like? So I think that's one thing to discuss, is when are people available? Does it have to be a Wednesday? Can we do it sooner? Questions of that nature. So I'm just throwing that open. I can meet any day. So how about you, Dan? When do you head out?
Well, I'm on Wednesday, the
Okay.
19th.
Okay. How about?
So I
Ms.
mean,
Nelson?
I could meet the day before, but yeah.
So how about you, Ms. Nelson?
Are we talking about the 26th?
No, I think earlier.
The issue is that I'm in the office now, so nothing
I
is
didn't
going
quite
to be
catch
good.
that. What did you say?
I said the issue is now I am back in the office.
I see.
So I need to know what date you're talking about, because I don't get off work until 6:30. But I'm not asking to change the time. I just want to know what date, because I have to, you know.
Okay. So I would leave that to Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Smith to say what day, because I'm fairly flexible. So do we want to meet on the 18th? Or even
mean,
sooner?
Tuesday
I
the
mean, I think we
18th.
have the manual ready, so for the most part to discuss. So if we are able to read the manual and come back with questions and even notate things and ask and do some question answers online, we could meet up on the day before, which is the 18th, and finalize. Does that give everybody enough time to go through, or would we even like to do it even sooner?
That works for me at the 18th, but Ms. Nelson, would a different time, like later, work for you? Or
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that worked for others, but
No, that's fine. I'm just looking at the Wednesday because this is an additional, meeting in the same month. So I can do the 19th. I can't do the 18th. But maybe the other commissioner can. I know we're trying to get a quorum present, but
I mean, we have a quorum now, so if we can be, it depends on how much we can finish in the next 20 minutes.
mhm.
So I have a message from Chair Parker saying, let's do it on the 19th. So I think that would be fine. Right, at the same time? Is the same time okay, or should we move it to 7 now?
Fine. 6:30 is fine.
Okay, is that
6. 6 is fine. Sorry.
6
6 is fine.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay. All right.
okay,
so
and I can have any of my comments or something submitted in advance so that there are no, hopefully, like surprises or something, just any questions in advance so that I can minimize in case I have problems with reception or something, I think I can still be on, but I may not be as focused or tethered to a computer where I could be looking up at the same time the document, but let's do that then.
Oh,
When
I'm
did you say
sorry.
you were
I'm
leaving?
sorry. You can't do the 19th, then don't do the
Well, I
19th.
can do the night. I mean, I'm driving on the 19th, but
No, then why
somebody
don't
else,
we move
No.
it to,
somebody else can be driving. I can be the passenger.
no, why don't we move it to the 18th then?
Miss Nelson can't do the 18th.
Okay, so is there a day between now and the 18th that you can do, Ms. Nelson? Or is that
Mm.
hard?
Hold on.
I mean, a lot of this could be done by email. A lot of the, if there are questions about the manual, we could just start that discussion by email. And let me see what's going on in the chat. Okay. Yeah, so if it's not possible to do it for the 19th, then let's just.
I mean, I think we could do the 19th if I think I can make that work.
All right, so the 19th it is at 6 p.m. to finalize the manual, and we will. I mean, if you already had a look at it, maybe we can raise questions now and move to that. So, and what was the other? There was another item.
And this will actually be helpful in making revisions to the summary guide, which is the discussion around the in-kind donations.
Yes. So the in-kind donations are, I mean, that is not addressed. Would you say that was not addressed that specifically in the language of the law? And right. So what we have addressed in the language of the law is that $250 is the maximum a person living in the county can contribute to a publicly financed candidate. And the only exception that is called out is that the candidate and the candidate's spouse can each contribute $6,000, and none of that is matched. So that could be an initial outlay that the candidate chooses to make while they set up their candidacy and their publicly financed campaign going. So there is the question of what is it, whether in-kind is allowed and what is the in-kind amount. And if you want to take that going, Ms. Warner-Wiggins, then we can have a discussion on that.
Well, can I just jump in? I don't think there's any I don't think there's any ambiguity that in-kind is allowed for an individual up to $250. So if you want to do in-kind, like rather than cash, and have that declared, so submit a receipt or declare I spent so much on whatever was allowed, I don't think there's any ambiguity in that. I think, and that anything beyond that is not allowed. And there's nothing allowed for contribution in kind or cash from anyone that's not an individual entity. I think the only question I had was it might be helpful for some nitpickers and people that get nervous about details, like if I'm coming to a campaign event, like we're going to get together and we're all going to go out and door knock or something, and I bring donuts and coffee for the group, is that is that an in-kind contribution, or does that not have to be reported, or do I have to, like, okay, I'm bringing this, everybody throw some money in the pot to pay me back? But I would think that distinction, do we need to raise that or not? Because I think it's clear that if I paid for a catering company, or I paid for a whole bunch of stuff to come in for a campaign lunch or event or something, that would be an event. Or if a friendly, I don't know, just a friendly vendor or a restaurant that likes the candidate says, I'll give you a discount, or here, I'll just make the first, you can have free lunch today for an event. That's not permitted. But is there anything about when does one have to declare an in-kind? And I guess we might want some language addressing that. And I wonder if that's been addressed anywhere else, like
Yes.
bringing in
think it
donuts.
has- yeah. Sorry, yeah, it has been addressed in, I think, Montgomery County, Howard County manuals. I don't know if it's there in the legislation that went with those counties, but Ms. Warner-Wiggins has some information to share on that.
I don't know if I'll go back and look at the manuals, if they address that specific kind of situation. We're gathering early in the morning, like you said, and I'm bringing, some donuts and coffee. Is that considered an in-kind donation? My thought is that, I see Mr. Maddox joined. I don't know if he'll have thoughts on this specific issue. My thought is that, especially given the low $250 maximum donation that's permitted, all of that should be factored in and be considered a donation. The only thing, I looked at the state law around in-kind. The one thing that I saw that they indicated would not be applied towards in-kind would be an individual's time or their use of their personal vehicle. So the gas they use and their time would not count towards the would not be considered in kind or would not count towards the threshold. It would be, I guess, essentially it is kind of a service they're providing, but it does not count towards the in kind threshold that the state election law has.
So for instance, if I know how to set up a website and I just have that skill and I can set up a website for a candidate and not charge them anything, then that would simply be called a skill I have. And that would not come under a dollar value, is that correct?
I would not think so because it's an individual volunteering their time.
Okay, and that applies for anything, for door knocking and all of that, right? None of
Right,
that.
right, none of that.
Comes under the
Yeah.
same category as that. It's time that you are putting in
Right,
and the skill you might have.
right.
But anything that you are then buying and contributing is limited to $250 because this is a publicly financed campaign. I think that makes it fairly clear, right, of what is allowed and what is not. And anything that you contribute in that fashion is not matched, which is the other issue, I think, that is fairly clearly spelled out in the legislation where it says in kind that the director shall not contribute a public contribution, shall not distribute a public contribution based on an in-kind contribution of property, goods, or services, is what it says in the language of the bill.
Yep.
So I think, I mean, at least to me, that resolves it, but I'm happy to have anyone else who has comments on this speak up.
And it would also be helpful, like the situation you brought up, Commissioner Smith, if anybody else has circumstances like that, it would be helpful to bring them up, even if you have in mind where the commission would fall on the issue, because those are the kinds of things that would be helpful to include in a frequently asked questions document. So because if you're thinking of that situation and you have the question, I imagine others may also ask, well, what about this? What about that? So if there's anything that may seem ambiguous or a gray area, please let me know. Even if you have an idea of where we should land, because I'll include that in a frequently asked questions document.
Anyone else?
I don't have anything more on that. I had one other just quick question, and it does say in the manual that sources of funds for the fund include interest on count funds. I'm just curious then, is there, maybe someone can check for the next meeting, whether do we have any earnings from the 400,000 that was appropriated now almost 2 years ago or a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I'll need to, and I don't know if Ms. Allen has some initial thoughts, but my understanding is that because it's not essentially sitting in a bank account, collecting interest, there's an accounting function that can happen for funds such as this, where earnings that the county has can be distributed to various funds using some type of accounting formula. So I would need to speak to someone in our accounting division for more information on exactly the mechanism for doing that.
Yes, we could do that. We, our county funds, any excess funds that the county has are held in a money market account, and we can get the monthly interest rate that's earned on those funds, and we can have funds allocated to this fund based on that. So we'll check into that, and we'll get back to you all.
So, and one other thing that maybe it's a little more of a technicality, and maybe Mr. Maddox or someone would know. when I was reading the guide, the manual, and it talked about if a candidate withdraws, so technically withdraws from a race after filing and receiving some funds, that one has to return anything that had been paid. And as we saw even in this recent special primary, there was one candidate for in each of the offices that had filed that then suspended, I think was the term they used. And they were still on the ballot. I'm just wondering, is there a technicality there that someone, the difference between withdrawal and like suspension, can candidates still stop running but not formally withdraw so that they're still on the ballot and that they don't have to return those funds because they may have already spent all of it or part of it, but they still sort of suspend their campaign? Is that relevant here?
Yes, it is relevant. And yes, I think that very well could happen. That if someone doesn't formally withdraw, they would not be held to the same requirements. The way the bill is currently written, if they don't formally withdraw, they're not held to the requirements under withdrawal. They would be required to, even with a suspended campaign, of course, return any unspent funds in their account to the fund, including any funds they may have raised on their own. So the way the legislation is written, they not only have to return the matching dollars, this is any candidate, any unspent matching dollars, but also any unspent money, period, left in their public campaign financing account.
Yeah,
Would
so
actually
I
return
think,
to the fund.
yeah, I mean, I think everybody has to return all unspent monies at the
Mhm.
end of the election cycle. And in addition, we have examples both in Montgomery County and in Baltimore City of folks who sort of, suspended campaigning but did not actually withdraw from the race, and so that they wouldn't have to return monies, that all the matching monies that they received, they would not have to return that because they might have spent some of it. But in Baltimore City, not only did a candidate withdraw, but the candidate endorsed somebody else. And that was a big issue. And I think we can go back and find out exactly what happened and did the candidate return all the money? Because once one thing is, I mean, I don't think you're allowed to endorse another candidate when you're a publicly financed candidate. So that issue, I think we should clarify all that since we have examples before us and sort of, put that down explicitly then in the manual. So people are aware.
Yeah, I guess the question for me would be a little bit following up on that point would be, so if I suspend my campaign, but then still spend some money, so, and it may be a
I don't think you
hard
can do
legal
that. I don't think
technicality.
but you wouldn't be able to do that. You suspend your campaign, then you suspended it. It's not doing anything. So you shouldn't be allowed to spend it. I mean, that's a plain English interpretation.
But if you don't withdraw, I mean, isn't that currently what's
Withdrawal is a
happening right now?
formal withdrawal is a formal process. I understand, but when you suspend your campaign is just that. It is suspended. There'll be no more action on behalf of that campaign, which would include spending.
Okay,
So
I just didn't know if that was a defined thing. So that
No, it's
the
not
two
defined. It's
candidates,
just, I'm just saying by nature of doing, when you suspend your campaign, what you're saying is we're engaging in no more action on this campaign, and spending monies in that account would be an action. You understand what I'm saying?
no, I understand. I just didn't know if there's a legal distinction, so that if we looked at the campaign accounts of the two candidates that, ran for county executive in District 5 and suspended, then there should be no further expenditures after that announced date, even though it's not a
Even though
legal.
it's not defined, I would I would venture to say the spirit of the law would not allow them to spend it.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
only
No,
for
I
publicly
agree.
financed candidates, sorry, but.
No, that would be across the board anyway.
Well, because
Right.
candidates have ongoing campaign accounts, and even after the election, they continue to spend from campaign accounts, right?
Yeah,
So
but you're saying
I
when
mean,
you
there is no
suspend,
campaign going on at that point.
right? But what I'm saying is, if you're making an announcement, you're suspending, that is an action you're proceeding that you are now your campaign is not engaging in any more actions.
But yes, but the candidates who suspended still have ongoing campaign accounts, and for the
Right.
next 4 years will be using money from that account. Are you saying?
Oh,
because
I don't know about that. I don't know. And I don't know, do they have a time limit as to when at some point do they just literally withdraw? I'm not sure. I can't tell you right off the top of my head right now, to be quite honest.
Yeah,
But I'm saying when you use the term suspension, you got to understand that does include some things that go along with that. That there's no more actions on behalf of that campaign.
well, I mean, so if you could clarify that for us at the next meeting, because I mean, candidates have accounts, right? And accounts have money in it, and
Right.
if, I mean, what is supposed to happen to that?
I'm not
They
sure. I
continue to
mean,
be in office and they still have that campaign account.
well, and the question is, what do they do at a certain point? Is it going to stay suspended in perpetuity? I don't know. I would have to go back and look and see what the state law says with respect to that, because you're talking about in general, as a general proposition.
Yeah, I think in the case of this program, it will not be an issue because after a certain point, they're required to return all the funds.
Right.
So they won't be holding on to funds
Right.
for years.
Right. And I don't know if the state law allows them to suspend in perpetuity. In other words, until the next election cycle, because I would think at that point, you're now extinguished.
Okay, so I think we can seek and get clarity on this issue. So we have Ms. Toulson, Commissioner Toulson has joined us, so we continue to have a quorum.
Wow.
So perhaps we could just continue this meeting and have the discussions we have and still meet the following week. So Ms. Toulson, Ms. Nelson had to leave at 6:30 and we thought we would have to discontinue the meeting then. But you have arrived and we now still continue to have a quorum. So perhaps we should just continue. I mean, I'm open to suggestions, but given the tight timeline we have, I suggest we continue the discussion on the manual and hash out anything else and meet again next week to finalize anything that we need to. Is that a reasonable suggestion? Happy to take comments from everyone.
Yeah, I think it would be good to just keep going on the few top of mind points here that we have.
Right. So, I mean, I think, I don't think candidates who are not publicly financed are held to the same level of expenditure and accountability as candidates who run publicly financed are. And so if the candidates, and this is my feeling, and I think we should obviously, get it all clarified, but the candidates who suspended campaigns might, during this special election, might still have expenses they have to pay for, and they would do that from their campaign funds. And I don't think that is, we need to check whether that is permissible or not, because otherwise, how do they pay for things they may have incurred? But when you are running a publicly financed candidacy, I think the rules are somehow tighter because public money is involved in this. And I'm aware that a candidate who basically did not formally announce a suspension of campaign and continued to be on the ballot and continued, but didn't campaign actively, was allowed to keep and use the monies and not required to return it in Montgomery County. And again, we have the Baltimore case, which became really quite messy because the candidate not only publicly suspended, but also endorsed a rival candidate. So I mean, I think we can gather all the information from those two and probably make things fairly clear in our manual.
But in terms of that Baltimore endorsing another candidate, I don't think, for me, that's not an issue, but spending money on behalf of another campaign would be, I would think, a violation of this, that, you know, the funds are for the qualified candidate. And if they suspend,
Right.
you know, in whatever term, I would think it's reasonable that if there are outstanding
Debt.
invoices
Right.
and commitments already made, that those could be paid. It's just that one
Right.
cannot
Spend the
initiate,
money. Any new
right,
purchase.
new,
Yeah,
you can't
that
keep
yeah.
buying stuff.
Yeah, because if you incur debt as that campaign committee or campaign as that campaign account, you're gonna have to pay that. Those are outstanding debts. That's not the same thing. What I was saying was, as far as spending making new expenditures. How about that?
So
Once you make that.
I would like to suggest that we get clarity from Mr. DeMarinis on this, because there
Yeah.
has been previous occasion for all this to get addressed. And my understanding from all of this was that the reason some candidate did not suspend their campaign was precisely because they had existing debt and they could not pay it out of the account if they suspended their campaign. And that was why they did not suspend their campaign. And I think endorsing another candidate is also something that we need to look into, because the people who have given you money for your campaign, and for you to throw your weight for some other candidate may sort of violate the spirit in which they gave you money for your campaign, because that may not be, they're not asking you whom you are endorsing. So I think we should just get clarity on this. And
Well, wait a minute. What are you asking? Because are you saying that you run a public campaign, you cannot date
yes,
any other candidate you're supporting?
yes, I think
That's a
as
First Amendment issue. That's totally out of line. I think you can't
I'm afraid
spend
you're
money
correct.
and also, wait a minute, isn't the law say that if I'm public and I want to do a joint brochure with somebody else, I can do that. I just have to pay for it. We each have to pay for our share. I
You
believe
mean as
that's
a
allowed,
slate?
right?
You're talking about as a slate.
No, I'm not talking about a formal slate, but just if I want to do a brochure with somebody else. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I remembered this. It's
I'm not
from
sure.
way back that
That may be
as
another
long
thing for clarification.
as
from
long
Mr.
as
Marin.
I'm paying for my share, I can do it, but you can't be on a slate. And that has other implications, right? But I mean, that's clear in there. You can't be on a slate.
Well,
But
I think the difference, and I think I would just defer to Mr. DeMarinis on this, because I think I mean, I disagree with the way that you are viewing this, because I think when you put public money and give it to a candidate, the assumption is that you are giving it for the good of that candidate and not for the good of other candidates that candidate may choose to ally with. And so I don't think, I mean, you haven't asked the people who gave you public money whether they're supporting this other candidate, right? All you know is that people have given money in support of candidate A. And I don't think candidate A can ally or do joint materials with another candidate and say that is the same thing. And I think the answer is simple. We just ask Mr. DeMarinis what the rules are, because I don't think we're going to get to the bottom of this.
right, we could do that in terms of the money, but I think the other, I thought you were asking two questions, I think, and that was, can you even endorse another candidate? So I'm running for, you know, county council and or something, and there's a mayoral candidate in my area, or the county executive, or the president, or the, you know, it's general election and there's people running for Congress, and I'm certainly any civic candidate is free to endorse. It's just a matter of not spending their money for that, right?
Right,
Let's
right.
get an answer to that. And I
Yep.
think,
Well,
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 I just want to jump in and say that if there is no state law prohibiting it,
Right.
the answer we're going to get is that it's up to the county.
Yeah.
I've met with the State Board of Elections in the beginning stages, and their stance is there, of course, there are state laws, state election laws,
Mhm.
but if it's not stated in there, then it's up to the county. This is the county's public campaign financing program. So even if
Right.
Montgomery County or Howard County does something, Prince George's County has to decide what it's going to do for its program. So I
Right.
don't, and this is a case where this discussion here, I think, is a county discussion, not a state discussion.
yeah, I mean, I would be interested in knowing how other counties have interpreted it, just
Mhm.
so we have something, we have some precedents to go by. And having joined this game later than other counties, we do have information we could get, and we can find that out. That would be very helpful, I think.
But I do recall, I do want to look it up because what Mr. Smith said about being able to possibly share expenses. I do recall reading something about that. I need to go back and look myself. It's not in terms, it's not being part of a slate, and it's not endorsing the other candidate. It's saying, we both need, I don't know, sign holders, and we can buy them at bulk. And so I'm going to pay for half and you pay for half. And we'll, I feel like there is something that says that that would be permitted because you're paying for your half of that item. As long as you pay for your share of whatever it is, then it's permitted. But I do have to remind myself where I saw that. So I will look that up and bring that back to the group.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mhm.
I had one other thing. I just wanted to just point out that just to make sure it was clear, I saw there was a section on impermissible contributions, and it has a list of things. And then way at the very end, it says one cannot be part of a slate. But I'm just wondering, in the language of the impermissible contributions, is it comprehensive enough? It doesn't mention slates there. And I just wonder if it needs to say about any political fund or something. And I'm thinking in particular, I don't exactly know how, but I know that in the special election last summer that some senators had a fundraiser and they raised money and then they donated that to one of the candidates. And I don't know if that's technically a slate or something else. Just want to make sure that the language is, there's no wiggle room for someone to say, oh, I think it's clear, but I just wonder whether we just want to make sure the words are all there so there's no ambiguity. That's all.
So this is on page 22 of the manual, where it says impermissible contributions. Ms. Wiggins, is that the place?
I can pull up the manual. Is everyone seeing the manual?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. And I will, of course, add page numbers.
Right.
Once everything is set. Let's see here. Okay. Is this where you're saying the applicant, you said impermissible contributions or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, first bullet, just
Yeah.
whether that's, a political action committee, a corporation, labor, state, central committee, or political party. Like, does the word slate need to be in there, or just say
Oh,
any
okay.
political committee? I don't know, maybe maybe this covers everything. I just didn't know if there's a different category of, political committees like senators getting together. Is that a slate, or is that some other way they can distribute funds? And
Yeah,
to
I
me,
guess.
it's yeah.
Go ahead. What I was going to say is that my understanding, it's the way the law is written, it says you cannot be a member of a slate. And so it's not so much a contribution as opposed to essentially tagging your campaign along with other candidates for other offices.
Yeah, that's probably a good distinction. I think because it is clear that you can only get contributions from residents,
Right.
individuals. So, yeah. So, okay.
And of course, this part is highlighted. And that is the reason why the in-kind contribution discussion was started was because back when we met, maybe April or May, the commission decided that in-kind contributions weren't accepted or should not be accepted at all or allowable at all. But I'll update this now to indicate maybe in-kind contributions above $250.
That the in-kind contribution is not matched, is that where we're leaving this, right?
It will not be matched at all,
Right.
but you can accept them up to the $250 limit.
Well, would it be acceptable, or is this just crazy to say that, or is it a can of worms just to say though that in-kind contributions of less than $25 or something don't need to be reported, or is that a can of worms? I'm
Oh,
just back
well,
to the coffee and donuts thing. Is what I'm back to.
yeah, that certainly would be a decision the commission would have to make because it's
I mean,
not
again,
it's not specific in the legislation. So
I mean, I would say let's find out what happened in other counties because, I mean, we're saying that labor is obviously not valued, right? Whereas the donuts get valued because you bought them in a shop. So if you're door knocking, you're not charging for your labor, or your labor is not.
Or even if I made cookies.
Yeah, if you made cookies, then that would be okay. Right.
No,
So
but
let's just find out, let's find out what happens in other counties. So we have something to go by.
yeah, and if it's we don't need to go there unless there's some other examples that make it clearer or easier to resolve. Otherwise, we can just leave it like we've got it. But if there's experience elsewhere that's helpful,
Yeah.
that'll be great.
I mean, because somebody's going to come back and ask us, so we might as well resolve this, right? And say what it is. I mean, now that we've asked the question, what is it that we would do, right? If we had a campaign and somebody brought donuts. So I think, it's fair to say, let's clarify it for the candidates.
Yeah, going by the summary guides of the other jurisdictions that have programs, they only mention just the 250, or I think all of them are probably 250 limit. They just mention that limit and that's it.
They don't say you have to report it, right?
No, they don't say whether you have to report it. I mean, you're just because I think the state does not require it to be reported. But or although I think with the public campaign financing, actually, I think you would typically because of that $250 limit. We do require that it be reported. But what I have not seen from any of the counties is some indication that a lesser in-kind donation is treated differently.
Right, I mean, so if our in-kind is subject to $250 maximum, the campaign does have to keep track, right? Of how much in-kind contribution has come in.
But they will need to keep track though, because of that
Yeah,
limit.
right.
The
right.
only way for them to ensure that because so say the individual buys, the donuts and coffee, for $25 or $50, that means they cannot give any more than $200 in cash or in a credit card donation.
Yes. So the campaign treasurer would have to keep track of this.
Yeah, they would need to keep track.
Yeah.
Is there a receipt? Does the receipt, is it a separate receipt or is there a checkbox that says this is in-kind contribution valued at $75? If it has to be reported, we should make
Yeah.
it easy to report. Easy.
Yeah. And we can create a receipt, or
Yeah.
a receipt template that has something like that, something to indicate the method of donation if it was in.
Because there is a receipt template required of candidates who contribute cash, right? So it would make sense. It would be simpler for the treasurer if there was a receipt. The treasurer could keep track of. Because otherwise you'd be putting the onus on the treasurer to say how much has this person contributed in kind. Yeah.
I think it would open a can of worms, particularly if the commission's sticking to the $250 limit for in-kind, to not include everything.
Yeah.
Because it's such a small figure that it would be, it's going to be pretty easy to bump up against that limit.
Yeah. And I think, we are keeping track of $25 cash donations to the campaign, so the treasurer would just have to keep track of $25 in kind contribution as well. If it's all subject to the same max. So I think we've thrashed this topic of income contributions sufficiently, and is there anything else we want to?
I can just,
I know Ms. Warner Wiggins has
Mhm.
looked at other campaign public financing documents from other jurisdictions while formulating this one. So
And
you'll
I'm
be,
just scrolling through. If anybody wants me to stop, let me know.
yeah, we all have a copy of this
Yes.
that was sent to us, so it would be good if between now and next week, if there are any questions to be asked by email, then I would suggest that the group does that as well. So we can be efficient next week.
So, Ms. Warner Wiggins, you mentioned a possibility of like an FAQ. And is
Yes.
that something that maybe would be an appendix or separate, or because I seemed to me that it could be helpful just to have a little, I don't know, summary or some highlights. And maybe that's the same thing as an FAQ for somebody that just the real highlights of what's involved. And if it's in the document, then we get to pull it out and use it separately. But I don't know what your thoughts were about that.
We can also post the PowerPoint presentation
Okay.
that we used, in a way that's a summary of the program itself. It doesn't, get into the details of some of these topics. I was envisioning the frequently asked questions as a separate document. But if anyone has,
Yeah, no, that would be good. I think,
Okay.
given how many questions we have at this point,
right.
I think a treasurer of a campaign would have an infinitely large number of questions in addition to.
And I think that one of the most helpful additions would be for a frequently asked questions document would be those odd or gray area situations and providing some clarity. So, so again, if anybody thinks of anything else that's may fall into a gray area, please let me know and we can throw that in.
So I guess a request to everybody to please go through
Mm-hmm.
the manual carefully and raise any issues, questions you have via email during this upcoming week, so we can be efficient discussing these in the following week. So do you think you're mostly done, Ms. Warner-Wiggins, or are there more
Yes.
issues you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
do have to do those updates around the in-kind.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the only, I would say, significant thing. And
Okay.
of course the, the table of contents and all of that. But yeah, other than that, yes, I would say yes, it's mostly done.
Okay. Questions? Any other topics? And again, also on the agenda will be the budget
Mhm.
allocation
Yeah.
for our program.
Is do we have a date from internally staff when the proposed budget or the will come from the acting executive? I mean, the 15th is the deadline. Is it literally
Tomorrow.
expected the 15th or what?
Tomorrow. We're expecting it tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Tomorrow, okay.
I'm sorry, it's tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's Thursday. Losing track. Yes, tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there I don't know, is it appropriate to ask if when it is public, whether you could let us know what may be in there for this, or whether or how we could easily find that? I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
real familiar with I presume it's a massive document.
Yes. From what I understand, it's 1,000 pages. Literally. So yes, it's massive. But of course they divide it by agency. So I'm sure it'll be uploaded in a way that's easily digestible.
So
And yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, Dan.
would our line item be in under finance office?
Yes. It should be as a fund under the Office of Finance.
Okay.
I haven't, of course I haven't seen the document either, but I believe so.
Okay.
And so once this number is out, I'm not sure you're in a position to answer, but I'm just throwing this out rhetorically. Will the finance director be then considering what happens? Because a decision has to be made, by July on the implications of the total amount in the budget and how that is dealt with, right, going forward. I mean, we have at the moment been considering, how this could work for how many candidates. And I think we're all sort of fully aware that it's going to be difficult to match monies, particularly for candidates who may choose to run for exec, but we can't stop candidates running for any of these seats, even if we are budgeting in our own minds in a different fashion. So I would sort of be interested to know how we need to channel our thoughts once the budget amount is out.
But that's just the proposed amount. I mean, it's not finalized
Yes,
till
I
the
know.
council at the end of May.
Yes.
But is it appropriate though I mean, can you let us know or just send us an email that would say our line item is on page 645 or
Oh yes, of course. Yep.
You can
okay, that'd
extract
be
it too and
helpful.
send it, yeah, and extract
That,
it and
that
send
would
it to us would be useful too, yeah.
that would be very helpful.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure can.
So we're a couple of minutes from our stated hour-long deadline. Do we need to continue beyond that, or how are we doing?
Uh,
Yeah.
If no one has any other
Uh,
specific
I
questions.
don't have anything else.
How about Chair Parker? Last words? Comments and the words. So, Ms. Toulson, anything?
Just that, I guess, are people aware that one candidate has already filed the notice to run under this program? At least one that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
And,
I looked it up as one, right?
Okay, so
Mhm.
that's already online.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's a council in District 1, I guess, candidate. So the interest has begun.
Yes. Okay, so Ms. Toulson says she doesn't have any questions or comments. So we are meeting again next week, same time. To finalize any thoughts we have on the manual and to give our approval to vote on that. So please do come to that meeting. We need a quorum of 4 at least. So what do we do about the fact that we only have six members now, Ms. Warner-Wiggins? Is that it's the executive's choice to allocate, to pick someone else for that? Would that be the acting executive's prerogative now?
I have not heard from the acting county executive. I don't know if she would choose to exercise that or allow the incoming county executive to do that.
Because we're then short of one person until
Mhm.
all the budget negotiations are done, so it might be. Yeah, so if we could find that out, that would be useful if you think. If there is anything to find out, and let us know.
Mhm. The appointments officer, I'm not sure of her exact title, is aware
Okay,
of the vacancy.
okay, so in the interest of punctuality, should we close this meeting?
Sure, I'll move to close the meeting.
Second? Anyone to second?
Second.
Right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right, so hearing no objection, I guess we call
Aye.
this meeting. Thank you, everyone. for
Okay.
joining.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks for our
guys. See
support,
y'all next
staff.
week.
Appreciate it. Okay, thanks.